fantastic friend of the program, Stephen Brooks of 24/7 Sports, joins the show to play a little bit of fill in the blank, answer some mailbag questions. But first, hey, there are some players with some new skill sets on this Michigan State team. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions, they apply. Stephen Brooks of 24/7 Sports, friend of the program, friend in real life. It is beautiful to see your face again, Stephen. How on earth are we doing as we are now less than 2 weeks away from Spartans versus Chips under the lights, Stripe Stadium? How are we feeling, Stephen? How are we feeling?
Better than ever. You just got me fired up there, man. I mean, there's like you kind of took my line. I mean, there's two signs since I was a wee child. There's two signs of football seasons around the corner. It's the weather and it's Matt Sheehan on my computer. So, for a good 20 plus years, it's like Groundhog's Day. That's the sign that football's right around the corner. So I know we're almost there. Really excited to get after it. I think it's a super interesting season coming up here, quite honestly. I don't know. Maybe from your, I think I can imagine you're going to be on a ride this year. But I think it's really interesting when you look at the whole picture of where the program is and Mel Tucker's entire time here and everything. And also, as I'm sure we'll talk about, I mean, there's so many unknowns. And I guess you could say that every year in every preseason, because what do we really actually know, as media bozos? But this year specifically, I mean, it's right in line with that COVID year in terms of what the heck was this going to look like? I got obviously first year staff back then. There's so much that we don't know about this team heading into game one.
So before we start talking more about, hey, what's going to go on in 2 weeks, Spartans versus Chippewas, let's actually roll the clock back about 2 weeks, because Stephen, never let anyone tell you that you are not creative, because you blend together perfectly ball-knowing ability and then creativity, because you did a piece for 24/7 Sports. It was 3 players with skill sets that have never been at East Lansing under Mel Tucker here. Just want to talk about that piece here, because I won't spoil it. I won't say the 3 players with the skill sets. I'll let you do all the talking for that, because these are also 3 players that could very well be very important for this interesting year coming up for Michigan State.
Yeah, it was something that I've been wanting to write. It just sort of hit me. It's like these are 3 guys with tools that they haven't really had under Mel Tucker. I want to be clear. Not that they've never had players like this, but you look at Jaren Mangham coming in from South Florida, previously played under Mel at Colorado, 6'2"-ish and 235 pounds, I think he's listed at, maybe even a touch bigger than that, on the right day. They haven't had that type of guy, like a true battering ram type of running back. Now, you might say Connor Hayward. Well, how many of you guys really enjoyed watching Connor Hayward run the ball? Let's be honest. I mean, everybody loved what he did at the end of his career. And he turned things around and turned himself into a pro and probably a long-time pro. And great for him. Good on him, good on the staff, good on everybody for figuring that out and buying in and everything that took. But think back to 2020 or earlier and some of those carries, where it was just snap, handoff, stonewalled, or the hole is over here and they're going over here, or just running right up the linemen's backs. And it wasn't pretty. I mean, he wasn't a natural running back. He had never played that until he went to college. He was a wide receiver, slot, quarterback, running back type. He was like just a Swiss Army knife in high school and everything. So anyway, Jaren Mangham is a tried and true running back with running back instincts and experience in those techniques and skills. So I think having a true big bag is obviously something they haven't had. I think it's going to be valuable. I think there's a decent chance he leads them in rushing touchdowns this year. Okay. Obviously, you get to the goal line, you want a guy like that in there. Short yardage was a weakness for this team last year. Think about how many 3rd and 1, 4th and 1s they lined up for, and you knew, what play. First of all, you knew what play was coming, Second of all, you knew it wasn't going to work, a good percentage of the time. So I think Mangham can be an asset on short yardage. And I'm not even just pegging him into this, square pegging him or whatever into this role. I think there's a decent chance he's, sort of their 1B back and gets a whole bunch of carries outside of just those specialized roles. But they haven't had that, right? You look at the run game, they haven't had tight ends that block very proficiently. Again, we all love Connor Hayward. You can look up Kenneth Walker's highlights and see Connor making some great blocks here and there. But if you looked at his entire 500, 600 snaps or whatever he played, he looked like a guy who had just picked up the position 3 months ago, or less in certain situations. So he did some great things. He tried hard. He did, he was good. He was more than serviceable, but still wasn't sort of a true tight end there, a guy who had those years of reps, learning blocking technique and all of that. So they bring in a guy, Tyneil Hopper from Boise State, who a six-year player with 40 games under his belt, but 20 receptions at 200 yards receiving, So what does that tell you? And then if you ever see any of his film, he's a very willing blocker. He's an adept blocker. He's about 6'2", 240-ish, something like that. So he's not this rangy, sexy target that you want to get moving downfield. I mean, he's sort of like a fullback out there, a modern day fullback. So I think he's, again, Connor Hayward, Tyler Hunt, salute, tried their hardest, and some of these other guys. But as much flack as the offensive line has taken the last couple of years, the tight ends deserve just as much, if not more, probably attention for how they were, the crack in the dam that blew everything up front. So if they could have a high-level blocking tight end, I think that would do wonders for this offense. I think that can be Tyneil Hopper. Maybe it's Jalen Franklin from Wisconsin. Maybe I just have the wrong guy, but the right skill set. He hasn't played as much, though, and I've seen what Hopper can do on tape. So, but I've heard some decent things about Franklin as well. And then the third guy is Tunmise Adeleye, transfer from Texas A&M. Folks were really excited about in the spring.
Hold time out. Great pronunciation, by the way. We are not going to let that slide by and not point that out. I have been fumbling my way through his name the entire offseason. That was eloquent, Stephen Brooks. Wow.
I'll give you another one. I've had reps. I'll give you another one. Tunmise Adeleye, big defensive end, came in at 290 pounds. And the thing he's been talking to us about is playing, this is a little bit inside baseball, but mostly it's zero technique, which means you're lined up head up over the center, nose guard, folks will understand that. And then all the way out to a 9 technique, which is about as wide as you can go as a defensive lineman outside of the tight end. What he's saying is just every single spot along the defensive line, any gap, any alignment on the D line, he feels comfortable doing and he's expecting to do. So I think he's going to be a major first and second down factor on rundowns. Again, 290, 280-pound defensive end should be much more physical presence for him there, much sturdier, so they don't get folded up on the edges there. And then third down, boom, you bump him inside. Now he's rushing against a center and a guard as a nose guard, true defensive tackle, something like that. Maybe you've got Windman next to him on the outside, or Zion Young, or Aaron Brule, something like that. So they can get creative. They haven't had that type of guy. They've had good defensive tackles. They've had good defensive ends. They haven't had a guy that can just, shape shift in between any of those roles that you want. So if he can tap into his potential, look, the guy's only played, I think, 3 college football games. Maybe it's 2. Not a lot. But if he can start to live up to that 4-star pedigree coming out of high school and, his measurables look good, his athleticism is reportedly very good. If he can start doing some things like that and be just a transformer along that defensive line and do different things and never come off the field, allow them to have different looks without him coming out the field. That's, again, a skill set that they haven't had so far. So those are 3 guys that I'm really intrigued about. I don't know. I don't think any of them are necessarily ceiling raisers. Maybe they're floor raisers a little bit. I don't know if they raise the ceiling of this team. So I don't want, that to be this is I don't want that to be the thing, but these are 3 individual guys that tool bag wise they haven't had so far.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Also, with Tunmise as well, he also looks like he's 33 years old. He's just a grown man. When you started to see the original pictures out of media day of him talking to the media, it's who's this assistant coach who's been in college coaching for 12 years? It's That's like the redshirt sophomore that we just got from Texas A&M. Very, very fun. Awesome. Also, really quick, I got to call myself out. I just used the word blend before all that instead of the word blended. That's the grammar you get here on Locked on Spartans. We're not going to let that slide.
You could have
No. We are transparent. We are honest. We take accountability on this podcast here. Steven, thank you so much for that whole breakdown. We're just going to send you to the bench for a little bit because you carried the whole first segment there. And also, I need to talk to people's ears off about LinkedIn jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. So that's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and, my favorite part, for free. Gang, it's so easy to add your job on LinkedIn Jobs. And once you do so, add the purple hashtag hiring frame to let people know that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So what are you waiting for out there? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/college. Sorry, linkedin.com/locked-on-college. That's linkedin.com/locked-on-college to post your job for free. linkedin.com/locked-on-college. Terms and conditions. You got that right, Buster. They apply. All right, checking back into the game here. It is the one, the only Stephen Brooks of 24/7 Sports. Thanks again just for really carrying the load of that first segment here. I'm going to repay you by doing a game that we haven't done in a very long time on Locked On Spartans. I'm kidding. We did this last week with John Kirby. It's called Fill in the Blank. I'm just going to have a sentence. There's going to be a blank. Stephen, I'm just going to politely ask you to fill that blank in. Are you ready, sir?
I think so. This sounds pretty complex, but we'll walk through it. We'll walk, crawl, run, or whatever. Crawl, walk, run.
Yeah. A lot of moving parts. If you need a breather, we'll hit pause. We'll edit all the things out. But here we go. Showtime. Blank is a guy no one is thinking of, but could get a starting job. Blank is a guy no one is thinking about, but could get a starting job. Or, hey, if there are no starting jobs, maybe someone that is really going to see their production increase going into this year. Mr. Brooks. Wow. I got him, folks. I got him. Yeah. I got him. Let's go. Let's go.
I'm thinking of the answer. I'm not trying to figure out the rules. That was a joke. Let me see. I mean, I feel like a lot of folks know the names. Like somebody who's not. Okay, well, here's one I think, and this can sort of touch a lot of things. Jordan Hall, is a true freshman linebacker. Okay. I think he's going to be a factor. In fact, from the freshman class, he's number one with a bullet, firmly number one, I think, in terms of who's going to be a contributor. And it's kind of funny when you look at that class, like it's the highest ranked class they've had with this staff, highest ranked class the program's had in good 6, 7, 8 years. And I can really only name I don't need a second hand to pick guys that probably play, and burn their red shirt this year. But Jordan Hall is the first one by far. I think if he's healthy, I think he can probably play in every game. I do think he'll rotate in on defense. They love what he brings. You see him out there in practice, and it's like, oh, that's a junior, right? Is he gearing up for a big season to try to make it to the league or something? Like, he physically fits in better than the returning guys, basically. I mean, he's put together, ready to go. And they say his mind is just, is like a ChatGPT out there. He's very much ahead of the curve and pick things up quickly. So I guess that, I mean, maybe even I don't want to go that far. He's not, with what they have, he's not starting for challenging for a starting job. Mm-hmm. But I mean, elsewhere, I'm trying to think, there's not many other holes where I think a guy could come out of nowhere. I think it's a lot of guys we've seen or heard about. I mean, receiver is competitive, but you guys know all those names.
Yeah.
The offensive line's competitive, but you know all those names. You've seen most of those guys other than, Blackstock comes in and he's competing. So, yeah, I guess just give me Jordan Hall as maybe a semi out of nowhere guy. But other than that, I think it's a lot of familiar names.
I like that just because of how hard it is for a true freshman to step into any starting role, let alone a linebacker role here. But hey, look, he looked great in that open practice on Big Ten Network that a lot of us fans saw. We're like, hey, maybe he can be an instant contributor, but we've been burned on spring practice before. I mean, Davion Prim was going to win the Heisman one spring, and then next thing you know it, nowhere to be seen. Fast forward a few months later. But I want to throw a name on the wall here, and let me know how off base I am. Chance Rucker, I feel like I'm hearing his name a lot. That's clearly a position that could use any help that they could possibly get. Where do you see him in the pecking order, though, for cornerback? Like, is he even close to perhaps maybe getting like not a starting position, but like instantly in the 2 deep, you think? Or is there a bit of a jam that I'm not seeing there?
I kind of see him as if he's really ready, he probably is on the fringe of the 2 deep. I mean,
Okay.
I think you're looking at, to me, the starters are going to come out of Chuck Brantley, of course, and then Dylan Tatum or Terry Roberts, the transfer they brought in from Miami via Iowa. I feel like that the starters I think will come out of there, but I mean Marquis Lowry I think is still in that mix. We've seen Caleb Coley has been making a move, and he was a guy coming out of high school I liked a lot. I think Ade Willie also in that class, was sort of a sleeper when he came in, but is not somebody to be overlooked. So I think it would be I think at best, Chance would probably be in that fringy 2 deep thing where we could see him from time to time, could see him on special teams, but I think he's a while away still. I think those guys ahead of him, we're going to get their shot first.
And let's just talk about, I'm sure, a topic that you never talk about with fans, people on the 24/7 Sports message board, but there's a quarterback battle going on, Stephen Brooks. So for sake of conversation, let's preface it with this, that right now, if the game started right now against Central Michigan, that Noah Kim is your starting quarterback. So, Stephen, for this next one, if Kim is at the goal line, Katin Houser is at the blank yard line. Basically, how close is he to meeting where Kim is at going into the season? Are we at the 1 yard line here, or are we still back at like the 18 yard line, or not even in the red zone here, in your opinion? I know.
I mean, if Kim's on the 1, then I think Hauser's on the 2, 2.5. I think it's very close. I think he started, I think maybe they started camp like, let's say 2 yards apart, for these purposes. And I think Hauser has made a move. I don't think Noah's been bad or by any stretch. I think he's done a lot of things that people hope to see from him. But I think Hauser has been more like, man, that's really interesting. Not just sort of status quo, like, all right, we got it. We've seen it. Let's move on. Like, I think he's made a move forward. Not that Kim's made a move back. Those things don't have to correspond. Sure. But, yeah, I think he's 1 yard behind him. I think he's sneaking right up on him. But I do still think that there is a little bit of daylight in between them. And, again, I agree with you. I mean, if they had to line him up, I think Noah would be the guy. And also, even if they're nose to nose and they're eye to eye, whatever, I do think that there's credibility to that idea that you just let the older guy go first, because if you have to pull a lever, then it's easier and everybody sort of understands, all right, we gave the older guy a shot. Now it's the younger guy's turn versus the younger guy. If you yank him, you've got confidence issues and all sorts of different things that can come into play. I just think it's a little smoother for team chemistry, morale, for confidence, for everything between the ears, QB room chemistry, all that stuff. If you have it's easier to pull the older guy for the younger guy than vice versa. It just is for dynamics.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we all know that on paper, at least, or the recruiting sites, that Katin Houser, he's the guy with the higher ceiling than Noah Kim, of course. Also, physically built, bigger than Noah Kim. So when was that going to finally catch up to the experience and skills that Noah Kim has? Because look, I'm not dogging Noah Kim. Like, he very clearly a solid quarterback. I mean, in the very small sample size we have, and also what we've seen in the practice, but it's just been fascinating to watch this horse race from afar to see, if or when the gap can be closed. But I mean, again, less than 2 weeks, that's still a world of difference. And this is a quarterback battle that I still think is going to go on the first 2 weeks of the season. So that's just how I read the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it's going to be settled in September, not August. Of course, they'll come out with an idea, but I think this is going to go into September, much like we saw at Michigan last year. I just think, I think Hauser's providing more of those like wow moments versus Kim is providing like that comfort, of like steady Eddie, like don't do anything crazy, make the right check, don't gamble with the ball, Remember back to the last time it was really heated like this was Peyton Thorne and Anthony Russo. And Peyton Thorne took care of the ball. Anthony Russo was a little more gunslinger and willy-nilly with it. That's what won him the job. So this staff, this offense, and everything is going to be much more comfortable with somebody that they can trust and close their eyes. They know what they're going to get, even if the fireworks over here are like really pretty to look at. but over here is just like, the warm blanket in the glass of milk. Like, they're going to pick that. So that's just how they operate.
I love that. Absolutely love that. We are going to crack open the mailbag here. And Steven, for this one, get the beer stein out, get the Wiener Schnitzel out, put the lederhosens on, because it is Thomas all the way from Germany writing in here, locked on Spartans at gmail.com. I have a question about the transfer portal specifically as it relates to Michigan State this year. Generally, players enter the portal for two reasons. One, attractive NIL deals. Two, they get buried under their current team's roster and are seeking a chance to compete for a starting spot somewhere else. While instances like catching lightning in a bottle with Kenneth Walker's are remarkable, I'd like to ask, is any part of you concerned a significant portion of our transfer players are coming from programs like UConn, Liberty, Boise State, Southern Florida, etc., that would not typically be considered Big Ten level recruits? I think that there is a lot of validity to that question, because Liberty not necessarily, having a lot of luster on that shine. South Florida, especially in the last few years. But Steven, I'll let you dance first. I certainly have thoughts on this, but yeah, I mean, it is a good question worth asking from our guy Thomas all the way from over the pond in Germany.
It is. You got to look at every guy individually and in like the circumstances. I mean, you can say Liberty, but you could also say Auburn for Dre Butler, and why did he end up there or whatever. But he has Power 5 experience. Jaren Mangham and started at Colorado and then went to South Florida. So at one point, these were Power 5 guys, and so they at least had the measurables. That's one thing, and they have the talent, obviously, to get there at one point. Now, do they just want a quicker path to the field or whatever happened to make them leave their initial school? But I mean, there's a lot of other guys. Tunmise from Texas A&M, program of a certain stature folks might have heard about. Alante Brown's a guy I'm very curious about from Nebraska. A little bit of history over there. Let me see. Tyneil Hopper, as I said, from Boise State. I mean, come on, they've done some things. I think you can feel good about getting the guy out of there. And I'm sure there's others. Who am I not thinking of here? But there's other Power 5. We got Jared Jackson from
Jared Jackson
from Florida State. Jalen Sami from Colorado, I think, is going to be maybe the most impactful guy that they brought in. So I don't even know if that's fully accurate, to be honest. Terry Roberts was at Iowa and Miami, 2 Power 5s. Armorian Smith was from Cincinnati, which is moving into Power 5, but was like Boise State, was cream of the crop in Group of 5. So I don't know if that's totally accurate. And look, they brought a kid in from UNLV last year, which is one of the 10 worst programs in the sport last decade. And he walked in the door as one of the 5 best players on the roster. So I don't think you have to worry so much about that because everything is so unique. Like Jacoby Wimmer wanted a crack at the big time, and he came up and, for certain segments proved it very well. And then there's other guys like, that just needed a change of opportunity. They had a coaching change again, like Jalen Sami, who went through tons of coaching changes over at Colorado. He just wants some stability in an opportunity for his last year. Jaren Mangham wanted to work his way back up. It started there, went down, wanted to come back up, wanted to come up. So the everything being so unique and sort of bespoke for each guy that's why I don't think you can label them just off where they came from. I mean, look, Western Michigan had a couple kids hit the portal this offseason I think are going to be big deals where they ended up, and Michigan State did not pursue them. There's a linebacker and a D tackle at least. I think the D tackle ended up at Florida State. I forget about the backer. But anyway, 2 kids I think that are going to help them out. And Western Michigan was nothing last year, nothing notable. So, everything it's just so individualized and unique that I don't think you can paint with that broad of a brush.
Yeah, and my point too is a lot of these are just depth pieces too. Like you go to Liberty and Florida State to get Dre Butler, Jared Jackson. All right, one guy came from Liberty. Again, it's not Alabama to say the least. And another guy came from, the 2 deep of Florida State's depth chart. However, these aren't your starting defensive tackles. And what was a big priority for Mel Tucker is to beef up on that defensive line. It may sound silly that you're just going for size, but that actually does matter in football, especially when you are trying to stop the run. So you get rid of guys like Michael Fletcher. No disrespect. I mean, I thought he was a fine player here, but you go get a guy that's 3 inches taller, 40 pounds heavier in the portal. Or also a guy like Jaren Mangham, a guy that he wasn't a starter at USF down there. But just like we talked about in the first segment, that's a player that has never been in East Lansing under Mel Tucker. And Lord knows the issues with third and short, fourth and short. So you get a guy like that. I mean, so again, it is individual case-by-case basis. A lot of these guys are coming from schools that you don't really think about when you think of traditional powers, but I also think for the Nathan Carter specifically, I think that is more of a canine thing where it's like, yeah, I had my fun over here. It's time to do it at a bigger school with more national exposure. And what better place to do it than, well, the place where a guy just won a Doak Walker Award 2 years prior. So I think that was Nathan Carter's situation where, hey, Storrs, Connecticut is a lot of fun. I'm having a great time here, but
yeah.
I think there's something else better out there for me.
Let's revisit Nate Carter in November and see if where he came from is any type of issue. I would love to. Not gonna be a problem.
Yeah, but no, like again, I think it's a legitimate question to ask. So thank you very much, Thomas, for that one. Now, for this next one here, Steven, I don't know how much we delved into the world of financial advice, but we are going to do it because Luke writes in here, hey, looking at the spread for CMU versus Michigan State at minus 14.5. Our Spartans are favored 14.5 points. Luke writes in, should I put my bank account on this? I think we win by 20 plus. Your thoughts? I would also like to say there's a lawyer behind me. He suggests that I say that nothing we say can be held against us, and what we are saying is just friendly, recreational banter, not actual financial advice. Did I say that right, lawyer? Okay. All right. We're good. We're ready to go. Okay. Perfect.
Terms and conditions may apply. I love spending other people's money, so let's do it. Yes. Go. Buy. I mean, it's a little concerning. Yeah. Like you'd like to see that, I think around 21.5, 22, 20.5. Yeah. You know, it's a little concerning. Central brings back, I think, a decent amount of their defense. I'm not so sure about offensively. They lost the running back that was killing it a while ago. I believe, at least. I don't think he's still there. But
nope, they do. Sure. Lou Nichols, he's out of there. He's out.
Okay, yeah.
Thank God.
In the NFL and everything. So, so there's that. But yeah, you should just sheer outsize these guys, and that's pretty much the case every time. But especially with what they've done this year on the D line and everything. I mean, that's legit. They look different now. I know the BTN crew was over there and hyping them up and everything. I think a lot of that was the eye test, quite honestly, because you go over there now and it looks like those teams you see on TV. Like, I mean, don't misconstrue this, but I mean, like those big SEC teams, like a Georgia, whoever, but just the size wise, there's nobody out there that you're like, there's no, like these guys, like Simeon Barrow, Maverick Hansen, like are now like the small guys in their room. And like, if they had never added any tackles, like I would feel pretty good about them as a starting duo. Or Derek Harmon, throw him in there. They all look like Harmon now. Remember when Harmon came in, we were like, look how big this guy is. Like they're all that size now for the most part. And that's going to be the standard moving forward. So anyway, they should be able to beat them by more than 14.5 points. They should. If they don't, it's a problem. And there's, sound every alarm, send up every smoke signal, whatever you got to do, because that's not good. Central should not be within that many points. So go ahead, empty out the piggy bank, do what you got to do. And you don't want that stress either. Like you don't want it to bet it the other way. You don't want to be watching game one. You're all excited for the season to come back. Like, no, bet, align the vibes, align the bet in the same path there. You want that. And again, you should definitely plan on seeing Michigan State win by more than that. Because if not, then it's like I said, hit the red button and stop all future bets, because I don't know what's going to happen at that point. That would be a dicey situation. They should definitely win by more than that.
Took a lot of the words right out of my mouth. Like, yes, they should physically outmatch, especially with all the offseason moves they made on the defense. And then with the depth that we keep hearing about on the offensive line, you should be able to beat Central by more than 14 points. And look, I think Vegas spreads are a good indicator of, how teams match up on the road versus home, yada, yada, yada. But like this one, I hope is going to be like that spread where Northwestern was actually favored against us in week 1 in 2021. And they're just way off base here. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Could it get a little squirrely with the quarterback competition? You got, guys coming in every 2 series. Maybe that's how I could justify that it's only 14.5. But again, Lou Nichols is not there. And I got to say, I thought that he was there until I looked at like 2 or 3 weeks ago, just looking up Central Michigan. It's like, oh my God, he's not even there anymore. This is fantastic news. This is great. But still, this is a team that the media polls or the coaches poll, I forgot which one they do in the MAC for the preseason, has Central Michigan in the smack dab middle of their division. Like they got no first place votes. They're not anywhere near the top. You should, at home, in a sold-out crowd be able to boat race the chips. So, Luke, yeet that account. All on to the Spartans, minus 14.5. But also don't come crawling here if that doesn't hit, please.
No, you're good. You're good. Stone cold lock. We guarantee it.
Oh, God. Message me at lockedonspartans@gmail.com, and then I will give you Stephen Brooks' email address to invoice him any losses this whole entire season, not just week 1. But until then, Stephen, this was awesome. Anything you want to plug before we let you go and enjoy the rest of your week here, my man?
Just you guys know, SpartanTailgate.com is the easiest way, and then everything there, the Shaw Lane message board for our VIP people. Sign up as a VIP. Lots of great stuff going on now, all the way through camp, all the way through the season, and on and on and on, and on the cycle goes. So if you like what we got, or into recruiting, want to get into recruiting, want to hear some more in-depth columns and analysis, all that stuff, just come over, check it out, sign up if you like what you see, and we'd be happy to have you. It's pretty cool over there, in my unbiased opinion.
Sure. Yeah, why not? I'll throw you that bone. Why not? Yeah, I think you do good work, Stephen. You know what? But no, hey, thanks a lot for setting the tone for this week, Stephen. We're working on some other fun guests for this week as well. But hey, you guys know where to find us every day leading up to kickoff and beyond. It's Locked On Spartans. Now go enjoy the rest of your week, you beautiful people. Love you all. Go great.